when I grew up, my parents had a school that offered special education for autistic children. Now, I personally was the type of kid, and all my siblings were the type of kids that went into learning support. We needed help and we needed aid. The reason that I believe so fundamentally in AI is because if it wasn't for that socioeconomic background that allowed me to have education and access education that actually cared about me and cared about my learning and cared that I would have extra learning support lessons and cared that I couldn't take two languages because I struggled to process a language. I struggled to learn like everybody else, that I struggled with maths, right? If this learning system never considered that to be me, right? That is who I am, and I must be taken as I am and not be changed and shifted depending on what persona the education system has come up for me, I would not be where I am today. I would not have the language that I had. I would not speak English as fluently as I did. It is because those learning support teachers cared about me. But if I didn't have that, no one cared about me. So, if you don't have that, right, I'm caring about you by telling you to go open AI, find maths AI, find whatever other open AI source you can find, right, and use it. Use it. Because your life and your special unique talents are as valuable as any other person in this world. And the education system is not going to convince you, no, no, no. I'm going to tell you right now, yeah, your learning matters. And you should never stop learning because you've been in a system that makes learning, burdensome, makes you struggle just wanting to learn. Amongst my friends, I am considered to be an AI liberalist. I am a big believer in AI and education, right? That is one of the biggest reasons I believe in African entrepreneurship, AI education, learning that is integrated with AI. Now I've come to to raise my claims. The reason that I am a big believer in this is because there is no teacher who goes into education, right? They do their undergraduate degree, they become a professor, right? They go in and they study maths, singular. That's all they study. They study mathematics for 10, 15 years, which is an incredible achievement. I'm not discounting that. But then we go into a lecture room, a lecture hall that has 100 different students with 100 different backgrounds, 100 different students with 100 different learning differences. Each student was brought up a different way. Each student has a different context of life. A teacher, right, gives you knowledge on an individual topic, right? But that is not context dependent. Context dependent, I believe, is one of the most significant things that will determine how you learn. For instance, I am a student in Zimbabwe, right? I grew up in Harare, right? My experience is going to be completely different from somebody who grew up in more rural Zimbabwe, right? Meaning the way that I learn is going to be completely different. What I love the most about AI, and I always tell anyone, right, learning any subject, anyone who is learning anything in school, learning anything in education, make sure that you integrate some form of AI into your learning. And why do I say that? Because AI is context dependent. It understands why you repeat asking certain questions. It can calculate and count the amount of times you ask a question. And then it asks itself, right, how can I tailor what I'm teaching this person? How can I tailor every single interaction I have with this person, a persona that I have built about of a person? How can I tailor what I am teaching them to their needs? Right? Someone who speaks fluent English is going to learn differently to somebody who speaks non-fluent English. English is a second language. Why? Because AI can detect how many times you keep asking it to repeat certain things and translate words to you. So the next time it asks you, right, you ask it a question, right? AI is going to literally tell you. First, it's going to define the word for you because it understands that you are not a first language English speaker. In the same format, right? It's going to understand that maybe you are the type of person who needs a business example, right? If a student learns better with theories and principles than they do learn with, just being given information, okay, great, right? Then every single time I describe something to the student, I will apply a theory or a principle because each person has a completely different contextual idea. Everything that you learn is context dependent and why you learn it in that way. Every single time I've learned math in my life, there was no context dependent there was no context dependent learning. It was creating one persona of a person and then assuming that I am supposed to fill that generic, you know skeleton structure of a person. That Elsie Kyoko, is like Dave, and Dave is like Susan, and Susan is like Dave, and Franz is like Dave, and John is like Dave, and everybody's like Dave. Everybody's not like Dave. And that is what they do in education when AI is not considered in it. In mainstream education, we come up with a persona. We come up with a student, one generic student, and then we assume that every single person is that one generic student, and that is untrue. That is very untrue. But does that mean that everybody now, right, is dumb if they don't believe or they don't function like Dave does? No, that's not true. The thing is, what makes Dave Dave, right, and then what makes Susan Susan, right? What context has made Dave see certain things a certain way and be easily process mathematical terms different to the way Susan is struggling? Why is Susan struggling? Because Susan does not have a specific example that Susan can apply what you're telling her to in a way that applies in her life, and in a way that is context dependent on her life. It does not assume that you are one persona. AI actually can bridge any gap. It's not even just about democratization of information. It is about allowing people to be themselves and to feel good enough, right? Because none of us ever feel good enough in education. I remember never feeling good enough, right? Because I didn't learn like everybody else. And the teachers, as qualified as they were, couldn't teach me in the way that applied to me. And it is only when I went to learning support when they were able to look at the context of my life, do an assessment psychologically about how or where my strengths are and where my weaknesses are and how I learn. That is what made me learn more about how I learn and how I am able to take in certain forms of information faster than I will be in different contexts. That doesn't mean that I can never take that information in, right? If it's not in that context, so I can take it in a different context. It doesn't mean that I'll never understand. It just means that in the way that it is presented to me right now, I cannot understand it. But if you present it to me differently, right, the same way AI tailors it, AI recognizes that this person, if I tell them in this way, they're not going to understand. But if I tell them in this way, they'll understand. So yes, I am an AI liberalist, because if I didn't have the socioeconomic background I had, I would not be where I am today. Do not be so fearful of a system, right, that is going to fundamentally change all of our lives and not integrate it into your life. Because a lot of us are left behind, not because we're incapable, not because, we don't deserve it, not because somebody else, no, it happens because when an opportunity, a big opportunity comes and there's big change that is about to happen, we shy away from using it rather than integrating it. So from your AI liberalist friend, especially in an African context, because I know how many people, right, don't have those opportunities. How many people would just want the world to give them a chance, right? Use AI and use it and don't feel bad about it. Leverage that thing like your life depends on it and your future does, right? Because you can shape your future based off of AI learning and what other forms of learning you may want. Now, this is not about controversy, politics, or other. That is not the conversation that I'm having here. What I'm saying is that you are allowed to use AI to enhance your life, to enhance your education, to enhance the way you learn, and to remind yourself that the way that you learn, right, even if it may be different, even if you may be different, all, no matter what your background, no matter what struggles you have learning wise, no matter what, I couldn't even speak English properly almost 15 years ago. I struggled. Now look at me now, leveraging AI, my friend. This is 2026. We're here to win. We're here to win, and we're here to tailor education to us. But on a serious note, I am a big believer in AI and education and entrepreneurship because of the autonomy that it gives you. All of these things are ways that we as Africans and we as people in this world can make better choices, can have better futures, can be granted better opportunities, and not to be discounted because of our own unique struggles or our own unique contexts. I hope that maybe these minutes can give you a bit more hope, or just give you a slight belief in African entrepreneurship education, or just education in general. Obviously, I am biased towards African entrepreneurship education, but education in general with AI.